it's 4 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Priest, would you mind
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, item 2 is to approve the agenda as amended.
As amended?
Yeah.
I don't have any list of any minutes.
Okay. It says they're added item 10E per Superintendent Copeland, which is a consent agenda for
isolation petition.
Oh, okay, I see now. Okay, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we kind of switched up the order here for at least for presentations and recognitions, and we asked Brian Farmer with WSBA. I asked him to be available at the beginning of our meeting so that if we had questions or comments, he could kind of schedule it. You know, we're going to be at 4 o'clock rather than put it later back in the meeting when we weren't exactly sure when that was going to be. So Brian's on Zoom. We should be able to watch him over there on the screen behind you guys. The internet might be a little slow, so hopefully we can make it work on that. And really, just to have him be available to all of us if we have questions or things that have come up since we met with him in Casper about the search. Maybe any update that you could give us, Brian. You know, if we've had people apply, obviously we don't need names. And yeah, I guess I'll start with you, open it up to you, Brian, if you have anything you want to say first, and then any board members, if they have specific questions, we can go through that.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you adjusting your schedule and taking some time today to talk about your superintendent search. I want to start by telling you that this year is like no other that we've ever seen, like no other that we've seen in Wyoming, and like no other that we've seen across the nation. Even in the first year of our pandemic, we were conducting superintendent searches. This year, we are seeing remarkably few applications. And that is not unique to Wyoming. I've been in contact with my peers across the country. And as a matter of fact, my counterpart in Alaska has told me that they've had a couple of searches that have turned up 0 applicants in their searches. At this time, we have just three applications that we have received for your position. I will say that we are currently engaged in 4 superintendent searches in Wyoming. There is one additional search that we're not doing, but we're aware of and observing, keeping tabs on. And this is kind of a nationwide trend. What I heard from my counterparts in Minnesota, which tended to have somewhat similar experiences to us, is normally in a normal year for a normal district, or average, I guess, if you want to take the big and small combined, they might send out somewhere 30 to 40 inquiries. People ask, they send the materials out to 30 to 40 people, and they get something in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 back. And this year, they're seeing something in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 inquiries, and they're getting something in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 back. So what we've also heard, and Nevada was the first one to bring this up, We are experiencing something similar with the Sheridan 3 search. The majority of applications have been received in the week just prior to it closing. So in Nevada, they talked about having very few applicants and ending up again with somewhere around that 8 to 10 mark, but with about half of those coming in the final week. That is the case with our Sheridan 3 search, which closed on Friday. That they had about half of their applicants come in the last week. Again, it is notably small. And I think some folks are perhaps a little bit concerned just about raw numbers. As we talk with our counterparts across the country, one of the things we ask is, where are you advertising? How are you getting the word out? And we are utilizing the same sources and resources that are predominantly used across the country. We're also using some regional resources that are not necessarily common across the country. And then we've done a little bit of personal recruiting. That is talking to individual applicants about their interest. As you anticipated, your district has some internal applicant as well as external applicants. So I would say that is something that you thought could happen. Certainly we could see that play out more as we get closer to the closing date. As of right now, the closing date is set for the end of the month, the 27th. We're still following that model schedule that we gave to you when we originally provided you the schedule. And so though we only have a few back at this time, combination of internal, external, that we have to take a look at. I will say at this point, we're not concerned. Definitely would like to see more, but not concerned in that you won't have choices. We still think you're going to have good choices. You'll still have the opportunity to interview multiple applicants and compare multiple applicants for the position. But it is different than anything we have experienced in the past with just very small numbers. So I guess one of the things that we have told some of the other boards that we're working with is if you want to solicit candidates, you as an individual board, if you as a board want to make it clear that you would invite other candidate interviews, you can reach out. You can talk to a principal in your district, an administrator in another district, a superintendent in another district, and say, hey, we'd love to see your application. The one thing you would want to be clear in soliciting applications is that you're making no promises. If you want to reach out to folks and say, hey, we'd love to see your application, that would give you additional applications to consider. But at the end of the day, what you're looking for is not 10 good applications, 15 good applications, or even 8 good applications. At the end of the day, what you're really searching for is the one right fit. You want to make sure that you have the opportunity to compare that individual with others. What does it look like? How do these different candidates offer us opportunities for success? But I think even with low numbers, the truth of the matter is you're looking for that one right person to be the fit. So if you have multiple good candidates to look at, then we're confident that you'll be able to find that one right fit for your district. So I will answer some questions, and if there are no questions, I can tell you a little bit more about how you as a board responded to the survey. Mr. Chairman asked that I provide a little bit of summary about the characteristics qualifications survey that you did before. Or I can talk with you a little bit more about what to anticipate in the actual interview process. But I'll stop right here and see if you have questions about where we're at right now.
I have a question. I know whatever. I know that some of our internal applicants are principals. How does that look timeline-wise if we have to get a new principal, if we were to hire one of them? Because usually we have started in the past around this time looking for a principal too.
Yeah, I think we consider the prime hiring season for superintendents January, February, March. And typically principal hires follow that by just a little bit. You can still find good principals in March and into April. April 15th is really the tricky date because that's when, contract commitments for teaching staff are really expected. So I think, if we wrap up the solicitations in January, we do interviews and hiring in February. If you were to hire a principal, even at the end of February, that still does give you March and at least a portion of April to find a principal. And there will still be principal candidates available. Again, I suspect the pools will be smaller. Part of this is there's a nationwide teacher shortage, which has led to a reduction of the pool for administrative candidates nationally, which of course is leading to a reduction of the pool of candidates for district-wide leadership. So I do think that you'll still have the ability to make hire and quality hire. And certainly as your leadership team decides, you may look at things with contracts, to try it out. If you have somebody that you're not super sure about, then I think you address that a little bit in your contract with that candidate. But that's kind of putting the cart in front of the horse. I guess your question is the timeline still there? And the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up question about timeline. I know in the initial timeline, which we'll discuss later in our board section, but we talked about getting, if our closing date's the 27th, getting back with you to select finalists on February 1st, which is a Tuesday. Does that still seem doable from your end?
Yeah, that would be a preference for us to stick with that. If you need to change it, we certainly can. But I think that would be something that we would prefer to keep that moving, keep that process moving, and we've blocked that time off. So that would be our preference. But if you need to change, we're open.
Thank you. Maybe, if you don't mind, does anybody have questions? We can have some more here too. Casey. Brian, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit back with us the results or summarizing, what we put that we were prioritizing, what we were looking for.
Okay, so we will talk a little bit more about this on that meeting on February 1st, but let me just real quick run through some of the characteristics that you identified. With regard to leadership, you said that you were looking for a strong and dynamic leader with high standards of personal integrity, fairness, and ethicity. A problem solver willing to make a difference, willing to make difficult decisions for the best educational interests of students, even in difficult situations. With regard to teamwork, somebody who has the ability to facilitate the development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of a vision of learning that's shared and supported by both the school and the community. Exceptional personnel management skills with the ability to resolve conflicts and maintain positive morale. With regard to performance and instructional leadership, and understanding, appreciation, and encouragement for excellent teaching methodologies, and an ability to recruit and retain quality staff members, an understanding of the importance of vocational education and experiences in developing and maintaining quality of career and technical education programs. Somebody who will engage students, parents, and the community, an ability to be visible and accessible, and to deal openly with members of the board, with all employees, with students, with businesses, with the communities, and with media and legislators. An ability to interpret the needs of the district and the communities, to use expertise to improve the quality of education in the district. I think there was a lot of discussion, themes that we saw about the importance of somebody who will address each of the communities within your district. You've recognized that your communities have slightly different interests. Your schools have slightly different challenges, and this is going to be somebody that needs to manage those things well. There was a shared belief that your current superintendent has been doing a good job, that somebody that would exhibit similar characteristics of leading the district, of working with communities, of working with the board. I think there's also a recognition that each of the schools have unique needs, and the challenge going forward is how to make sure that each of these school needs and community needs are addressed as we go through potential resource reductions, as well as potential surpluses in funding, making sure that there is a fairness across the district. Like I said, I think we'll go a little bit more detail. We'll have sort of a summary sheet to share with you. But I think the leadership, the teamwork, somebody that's the instructional educational leader, somebody that works with communities, and somebody that communicates well, were the characteristics that you shared. We did receive 8 out of 9 surveys back. So I think we had a really good picture of what you as a board were looking for. And I think, there was a lot of consensus, a lot of agreement, even though this is something you did separately. I think you all have kind of a similar idea or similar vision as you move forward.
Thank you. You mentioned when we started, I can't remember what it was, but there was some other point you were going to touch on.
Sure. The process, what you can expect. So just fairly roughly, we will meet on February 1st. It'll probably be around 5 o'clock that we get started. The board will have a meal, and it will be an executive session. The meal is because you're going to be working. You're going to be working hard that night. I would plan 4 to 5 hours for that meeting. You're going to look at the applications. Depending on the number, my staff will either cut down the applications to around 6 or so for you to look at, All applications will be available to you, but we will cut down the group and make a recommendation of up to 6 for you to take a look at. Recommend that you select 3 for interviews. And interviews, we are going to suggest a process much like that was used when Mr. Copeland was hired. That means it's a very extensive process that engages your communities, engages both the diversity of geography in your communities, as well as addressing the different needs of your communities. So we will kind of work our way through what does that look like. In some places, let me just share what Carbon One chose to do. They chose to start the candidates' day out over in Little Snake River Valley. So they started with kind of a community forum in one community, and it was kind of like a breakfast meet and greet. They had, I don't know, cinnamon rolls or just a meet and greet. Maybe they didn't even do food, but they had a morning meet and greet at the school so that members of that community were able to see the candidates. The candidate was able to interact with members of the community. Members of the community were able to give some feedback on the candidate. Then the candidate toured school in that other part of the district, saw what teaching and learning looks like. It's not about seeing buildings when a candidate goes and looks at other schools. It's about seeing what teaching and learning looks like. So if we want to get out to Hannah, Elk Mountain, and do that, or if we want to start in encampment or something, that, that's possibilities. Medicine Bow, how you want to include that part of the district. But see what teaching and learning looks like there. Then typically lunch is an interview with administrators in the district. And so that's an opportunity for administrators to meet the candidates, to ask some questions, to provide the board with some feedback. We've designed feedback forms for you to use so that you can get feedback. In none of these groups are they voting and saying, we want candidate number 2, we want candidate number 3, we want candidate number 1. They're going to tell you what they see as strengths and potentially weaknesses or challenges with each of the candidates that you visit with. In the afternoon, there would be looking at teaching and learning in another part of the district. Sometimes, we're not able to hit everywhere, but sometimes we look at, say, elementary in one area or secondary in another, or maybe elementary and secondary in one part of the district and elementary and secondary in another part. But we'll encourage that candidate to kind of get through the district so that they get to see the challenges and the strengths that you have as a district. In the late afternoon, somewhere around 4 o'clock, 3:30, a staff forum. We would select staff from across the district. You would select staff from across the district. Not all staff, but representative of folks from across the district, teachers, bus drivers, maintenance custodians, secretaries, whatever from across the district to be a part of the staff committee. They would interview the candidates. All staff potentially could be invited to observe, but this staff forum would provide feedback, again, on each of the candidates. And then in the evening, somewhere around 5, 6 o'clock, a public forum, an opportunity for the public to meet candidates. Now, you can move that around. In Pine Bluffs, they moved it around. They had one in Pine Bluffs, one in Burns. I don't think they actually did Carpenter or Albin, but they talked about those possibilities. in their district of moving the community forums around. Again, if you're going to have one forum in the morning in one part of the community and a forum in the evening in another part, you're really just offering those opportunities to connect with members of the public. That's parents, business owners, legislators. I would invite your legislators to come to those if they would like. And again, they all have the opportunity to fill out feedback forms to provide that back to the board. And your day and the candidate's day ends with a board interview, typically 7:30 to 9 o'clock, that they interview with the board. So an interview is a very long day. In a lot of ways, it mimics a day that Mr. Copeland has. It starts off running around the district, meets with parents, meets with administrators, meets with teachers and staff, meets with the board. Really just an opportunity for them to get to see you, and for lots of people in your district to get to see them, to provide feedback. But the decision is made by you, the board. So everybody else can provide feedback, but you, the board, will conduct those interviews. And again, we're shooting for about 3 of them. So we'll interview those 3 candidates, and then you'll be able to make your selection. With a interview like that, it's highly unlikely that you would get all 3 done in 1 week. Because they arrive, let's say their interview is on a Tuesday, they arrive on Monday, they interview on Tuesday, and they go home on Wednesday. So if you've got a candidate who's interviewing on Tuesday and a candidate interviewing on Wednesday, then you have overlapping travel days, overlapping days where people are in the district. Typically what we see is that you get 2 done in 1 week and then 1 done in another week. So the process of interviewing typically stretches out over a couple of weeks. The board's going to need to meet and deliberate on the candidates once you're done with all of your interviews. So that 2-week time frame is pretty realistic for conducting interviews. But there are things to do to get ready for the interviews. Things like creating those staff teams. We typically suggest that each of the groups that conduct interviews have kind of a chairperson. And so that chairperson is really responsible for organizing that part of it. So if you have an administrative chairperson, perhaps it's your business manager, perhaps it's one of the building principals, but somebody who will kind of coordinate and says, hey, when we do our interview with the candidate, when we have our time with the candidate, what are the questions we want to ask? We want to treat each candidate the same. And then that person will be responsible for collecting feedback, getting that to the board secretary so that it can be made available to the board when you do your deliberations. Same thing with that staff process. You're going to want to think about, how do we get staff from across the district? What's an appropriate time? You have the challenge of travel that other folks maybe don't. And then even a consideration of, do we want to do any of it virtually to cut down on some of that travel? If we're going to have a staff forum, do we want to make that a virtual process? I know that Laramie One, Cheyenne, did sort of a hybrid thing where they had some people in the room and some people participating virtually when they did some of their interviews in their last process. So we've seen it done lots of ways across the state. At the end of the day, you, the board, are in charge. We're going to make some recommendations. We're going to tell you about things we've seen work well in other districts, but we'll work with you to design a process that you as a board want to see and make it happen. We have gone really outside of the box from our model. In Crook County, they wanted to do something totally different. So we devised a process for them that was different from our original recommendation. And it really kind of fit their desire to kind of do this all in a single day. What we did is we created 3 groups, and we rotated candidates between those 3 different groups. Now, the candidates didn't get to see the district like in this scenario that I painted out as our recommendation, but we created something where there were 3 stakeholder groups, and they rotated between that board, teacher, and staff, and I think administrator or public, where there are 3 groups, and they had about an hour and a half with each of those, and they just rotated candidates between those 3 groups. So they didn't want to use the process that we originally recommended, so we came up with something that fit kind of their needs. And I'll tell you, we'll talk to you about the kinds of things we've done in other districts to make it work. But that's our work on that February 1st. That's why it's going to take 4 to 5 hours, because you're going to read a whole bunch of applications, and reading those probably 6 applications would take somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. There's a lot of stuff there. And then we're going to have the opportunity to talk about them and select candidates. And then the opportunity to talk about and clarify and finalize this process, so that when we leave that February 1st, we have a pretty good idea of when interviews are going to be, what the interviews are going to look like, and then we're just going to start getting ready for those interviews, so you can get them in as soon as possible, interview those candidates in a reasonable time, make your decision, so that if you do need to do something like hire a principal, that you can move on it. And again, if any of those candidates are involved in other superintendent searches, you want to be able to make your decision in a timely fashion, so you don't lose them to some other district or some other process that they may be involved in. That's a whole bunch of stuff, but I wanted you to get a big picture idea of what happens from here.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian. One question I had about, that February 1st, if we close on the 27th, whatever day of the week that is, over that weekend, say we have 6 or 8 candidates, have you in the past, are you comfortable sharing the application packets with us over the weekend to have a chance to look at them a little bit ahead of time before the February 1st? Have you done that? Has it worked, not worked?
So one of the reasons that we have not done that is on the advice of legal counsel. If I make a folder on the web and make that folder available to you, then those applications become a public record, and they're available fully to the public. When we end up selecting our final 3, then their resumes, the part of the application that I deliver to you, the district, does become public, and we'll suggest that you put those resumes on your website. So your 3 finalists are going to be known to everybody. People are going to start Googling them right away. They're going to want to look at their resumes right away. Maybe if they know somebody in another district, your community is going to look into that. You might be tempted to look into those things, but it does chill the process. Some candidates may withdraw if their applications become public, regardless of if they become a finalist. They may be reluctant for people to know that they put in for something. They may feel that it potentially jeopardizes their current employment if they put in, but don't become a finalist. So to protect those, so long as the document remains in the custody and control of a consultant, it is not in the custody and control of the district, so it's not your document. At the point that I relinquish it to you, the district, which posting it on a shared drive would be akin to that. And so that's why we don't do that process. That's something our legal counsel has said, hey, you can do it, but just know it changes the game.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Brian?
No, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you, let's say hypothetically, we do have 12. Honestly, I don't expect that. But if there are 12, and if we recommend 6 to you, I'm still on February 1st bringing all 12 applications. Somebody wants to look through them, you're going to be able to look through them. And then I take it back and make sure that, that they remain in my custody. And then the next day, I will deliver the resume, the portion of the application to the district that will become public, and then you post that in your district. So you can see anything that we receive, but I need to remain in custody and control of the documents.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yep.
What is your process for selecting those applications? What do you use as your criteria? Do you call references, for example?
So we use a few things. Number one, we use the characteristics and qualifications survey that you did. You talked about characteristics, qualifications. We asked you things about education, about administrative experience. And so we use that as one of our filters to guide. We also look at the education and experience of candidates measured against our own filter of what it takes to be successful in Wyoming superintendency. So as I've worked with superintendents, I think, boy, I've lost count, but I've done a few dozen superintendent searches to have a pretty good sense of what it takes to be successful. And of course, Kevin Mitchell, one of our consultants, the executive director of the Superintendents Association, has been a superintendent in 2 districts. He works with Wyoming superintendents. So as we kind of look at the candidates and what characteristics do they exhibit to be successful as a Wyoming superintendent, is kind of that second filter that we use. And then our third filter is we do conduct an initial background check on each of the candidates. After you select the 3 finalists, we go a little bit deeper into them and provide you with any additional information that we find from a deeper look at those candidates, deeper background check. But those are the 3 kind of screening pieces that we use is how do they measure up against what you said you want? How do they measure up against what we know it takes to be a successful superintendent in Wyoming? And then what does our initial background check reveal about the candidates?
Thank you.
Good question. Okay, anything else? Okay, Brian, thank you for joining us. I think we'll sign off and move on with our agenda. Look forward to meeting with you on the 1st.
All right, well, thank you all. Wish you a good rest of your meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, while we're still on item 3, slight amendment, I think we're just adding a new teacher recognition, is that right?
I just told Laura, put it into her report.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. All right, moving on then to item 4, audience, any public comment? Negatory. No correspondence at this time. No hirings or resignations at this time. Okay, superintendent report, Dr. Copeland.
All right, I'll just quickly go through my report because you I'm sure already read those items. The enrollment figures are there. We're at 601, 7 down from last month, although I think we've added a few since the end of December. Legislative budget session is a shortened session. The schedule I attached to your board docs starts February 14th and ends March the 11th, or at least that's the official schedule. So mainly they'll talk about budget issues, so that's coming up starting February 14th. The WSBA Legislative Forum is on the 20th. If you want me to reach out to Representative Paxton, Senator Hicks about a meal that night, I'd certainly be glad to do that. My schedule's a little tight. If I can make it back through, fine, but I may not be there as I'll be coming back from the National Superintendent Conference on that Sunday. So, you want me to reach out to Jerry and Larry since we haven't passed? Do you want to wait on that to see how he's going? I mean, what's everybody's thinking on that? Or you can email me.
I would just say wait and see how many, if there are people that go, I think that's a good thing to do, even if there's one person that goes.
So I'll just kind of keep in touch with Dana on how many are going.
But I guess one thought and we get into this on the work session, we have a lot of meetings in February already for superintendent search. People may have kind of used up their spare time a little bit. So I would just see
if they're even able to go.
Yeah, if
if
people
add
go
another event.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I may just reach out back to you, James, once we get more numbers with you. And if you know you're not going to go, also let Dana know, just so we can write your name off the list because we've heard from him. COVID update, you can see we're still in a pretty good place. We have four staff members and one student positive. That was as of when I wrote this. I know there's been just a very slight uptick of a couple of kids that are having some symptoms, and I'm not sure, but still we're in a very good place. It's still very minimal, it's single digits so far. On staff and positives, they did change it to where if you have direct contact, you can, if you haven't, you stay out 5 days instead of the 10, so they halved the number of days to stay out. And then if you are a close contact of someone, then you can test every day for 5 days, and if you're negative, you can come back. We have enough tests we can offer that to staff, and frankly, that's the most important as far as being able to have school, is to have staff there. Parents can do that. It's not a very practical way to do things, and having to get a test each day. We would take in-home tests if parents have access to those, but that did change. So we've been very liberal as far as quarantining. We've only really quarantined immediate family members and maybe kids that have spent the weekend with somebody that was a positive. So we have not expanded that to just anybody that maybe had a lot of time. We're very flexible on that. But anyway, I just thought I'd take the news because that has changed, and we're getting that information out this week to staff and students. Facilities number 5, there's just, we had 4 electrical contractors that came to the on-site meeting at Elk Mountain and Hannah Elementary last week. That bid is due this coming Friday at 2. We're getting the bid out for our phone equipment replacement this week. Is that when it's going to be in the paper? And then we're working on the locker room renovation request for bids that should be in the paper next week. So several big things going on, especially the locker room and the phone equipment. Hopefully those will be summer projects. That's why I'm getting those out now. And then the only other thing that I'm aware of right now that's come up is just making sure those 2 rooms at Saratoga Middle High School are renovated somewhat for the 2 elementary classes that will be up there. And then number 6, I've just started listing the donations. This was a very good month. Farm Credit Services, $2,000 to Saratoga High School Ag Program. National Association of Ag Teachers, $2,500 to AGM FFA for Ag Supplies. And then Susan McMurray wrote a check for $25,000 to AGM Student Programs. And this was a personal donation, so very nice. So that's my report.
Real quick, on the donations, how are these solicited, or are these just given?
Not in all cases, some are. Like I think you can reach out to Bridge Street, for example, Bargains or Sinclair, and there's some requests that go out, but some just come in just because people want to donate. Like I don't know Susan McMurray, but I understand she's a former student and has ties to that community. And this is not her first donation. You know, we had one last month from her. And that was also personal, not from her foundation. We were clarifying that. In fact, Dana talked to her today. So we'll send her a letter about personal donation. Some of this is just, well, just very generous people. Cool. Yeah, very cool.
Okay, all right, thank you. It's nice, Wonder, you have a report for us.
I do, and while I'm waiting for that to all open up, I wanted to introduce our upper grade teacher, Angela Moreau. She comes to us from Florida. She's been with us since the beginning of years. So she's got the 3rd through 6th grade class here at HEM, or Medicine Bow, sorry. And yeah, it's been great. She used to live in Encampment years ago, so she's back in the area. And then we did get a new special ed teacher for the 2 little schools. She's not here this afternoon. Her name is Heather Bergman, and I'm hoping to be able to introduce her at either when we're up for HEM or Elk Mountains.
Do you have anything to say, Annie?
No, I'm just thankful that you welcomed me here and gave me this opportunity. My family really had to get out of Florida. We really love Wyoming, so we've been wanting to come back for a long time. So.
We're glad you're here. Welcome.
And my kids have the opportunity to. They love school here. I have one at HEM, and then my son is here, and we're starting to dislike school in Florida, and now they're just absolutely loving school again. So thank you for that.
And I'll keep my presentation short and sweet. One of our focuses this year in the northern schools has been parent and community involvement. And at Hannah Elementary, Sarah Jones has kind of been my chairperson for that. She's doing some upper graduate work, and it fits in with what she's doing, so she's kind of taking the lead on that. But I just put together a little PowerPoint of some of the things that we had. For our open houses at HES, we had 80% of the students and their families participated. It was carnival style. We had booths and things that people could go to, and huge turnout as far as number of people there, lots of positive feedback. Of course, everybody was happy to be able to be back in the buildings again after last year when they really couldn't. That is me getting a pie in the face. They raffled off the opportunity to pie the principals, so and she's so cute every time she sees me in the hallway. Did you get that whipped cream out of your hair? At Medicine Bow, 100% of our students and families participated, as did 100% at Elk Mountain. Those were smaller, just open houses. We had treats and everything. Of course, we have 4 families at Elk Mountain. It doesn't take a lot for us to get 100% there. Then, of course, we redid the Elk Mountain Pumpkin Patch this year. That is our PTO's fundraiser. They did it in conjunction with the library and the museum. We had 100% again student participation, amazing community participation, about 75 community members present. And if I remember correctly, our fundraising efforts, it was over $4,000 there. And then they split it 3 ways. So it was awesome. Then this is where we really kind of started to diverge from the typical school things. We did a dinner and STEAM challenge at HES. We fed, I guarantee, 150 people easily. We had community members, we had school board members, I think we determined that we got all but 4 of our families there. And then the STEAM activity was they had to build a float, like a Macy's Day float, to transport a turkey. And then there was a contest to see how far the floats went and everything. And there was an adult and a youth category, and they had a blast. We keep getting questions about when are we going to do one of those again? When are we going to do one of those again? Then our Christmas bazaar here at Medicine Bow. All but one of our students participated, about 65 community members. It was a big bazaar. Courtney made an amazing amount of crafts, as did the kids, and they all sold. I don't think there was a single thing left at the end of the night. Community members donated stuff. There was baked goods. The kids did carols. Mr. What did I just use his name? Chip, thank you. Helps the kids with the music portion, which he loves to come up. He's helped them last year and this year. Great turnout. Elk Mountain, we had a 100% student participation. About 25 additional community members came. They had their holiday program followed by dinner, and of course, Santa came to all three and visited the kids. At Hannah, we had a program along with silent auction, and then the staff and students put together cookie decorating kits that they sold and a hot cocoa bar. And it was really nice because last year when we had our spring program, we had the program, and I'm not kidding you guys, within 5 minutes, that gymnasium was empty. Everybody just, the program was over, they were gone. Everybody hung around for at least an hour after the program was done and socialized and visited, and it was really nice to see the community piece of that night. Tomorrow, or Thursday night, is our next parent night at Hannah, and we are doing an escape room murder mystery type thing. So they're doing 2 separate escape rooms, one for adults, one for youth. They're going to have a basket raffle again. They have been talking, I think at one point we're going to have some sort of a chili cook-off this winter, some more activities like that. So just some things that we've been doing to get the parents and the community back in the any questions? Or y'all are welcome. I will make sure that Dr. Copeland always knows when we have them, so you guys are welcome to come and join us whenever you want to.
So very cool.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brown, do you have anything on the special ed update?
Really not a whole lot, but just kind of where we were. We are down about 7 students right now from where we were last month. Some of that is that some of the kids did not qualify that we had qualified before. So I kind of feel like we're moving over the hump and kind of starting to get a handle on interventions in all of the schools, but helps our special ed members. And with, I had a link on there for you to look at the new targets. That goes with our state performance plan that I get every October. They're changing our targets for almost every area, and how they did that is they looked at the last 3 years. And so instead of having us shooting for 100% proficiency on the Y-top, they looked at the averages across the state and kind of figured out where our next target should be to keep us growing. And then they came up with a new formula of how to figure out graduation rate, and they are taking into account now if a kid graduates with a certificate instead of a regular diploma, that isn't going to really count against us like it did before. So really, where we were before, we were meeting most of our targets anyway, so now we really shouldn't have anything to worry about. Every once in a while, depending on the year and the kids and the grade and all of that, we have a grade level that doesn't meet proficiency with math or ELA, but based on the new targets, we should be really close in those areas too. Another big thing that's coming out is our indicator 8, which is the parent involvement survey. In the past, well, several years ago, the state would call the parents and survey them or send out emails. And then the last 2 years, they've kind of been starting to switch that over a little bit more to the districts where we kind of shared responsibility for that. And then this year, it's all on the districts to make sure that the parents are getting surveyed. Kind of the big in for that is they do offer a $100 gift card or a chance at a $100 gift card. So we're going to kind of try to use that to get parents to give us some feedback. It's really just a lot of asking them if they felt like they had a part in their child's education and IEP team meetings, and if they understood the process and all of that. And really with SPED, the last thing is just lots and lots of meetings here lately. We've been kind of trying to, it was crunch time right before break and then right after, trying to get everything in with the 2 weeks off. As Laura had mentioned, we did hire a new teacher up here, which is going to help a lot. So she's going to be handling Medicine Bow and Elk Mountain and all of the meetings and the planning and the instruction and kind of the whole thing, and she has taken that off and ran with it already. So we're already seeing really, really good things happening with our kids here. So that's exciting. Otherwise, just with the other federal programs, we've been talking about the monitoring. I think with all of the feedback we've gotten from the WDE folks, we've made corrections and added the things that they wanted, and so I think we are pretty much where we need to be with that. We do have the Title I conference coming up, so actually it's the same time as the next board meeting. So all the Title I staff is going to New Orleans to a big conference, and it has to do with the science of learning and reading and working with low-income kids and trauma-informed teaching and just all kinds of really, really good stuff. It's, I think, 3.5 days of conferences, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then just the last thing with our EL kids, we start their access testing February 1st, and so it'll be 3 days of, I'm just going to do it and go in and test those kids to see where their levels are at, and that's what helps us to determine if they still qualify for services and what services they need in the EL program. Any questions? Thank you.
No, update, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, my report is attached as usual. In terms of curriculum, we got a few updates for you. We are jumping back into our curriculum reviews that we had previously planned in the past. Various reasons, budgetary reasons, COVID reasons, we kind of scrapped, but I'm going to try to do 2 this year. So math, which we kind of put off, and then secondary ELA as well. Just some background, the ELA teachers, especially the 7th through 8th teachers, have been asking more and more frequently about taking a look at their curriculum. They have collections right now, and we're on year 5, we're at 7-year adoption, more or less. They cite a number of reasons for why they don't really wish to continue that curriculum. You can look at our YTOP data, and it really kind of supports that as well. So students need to be language in there. So we're going to take a look at that, and then, like I said, I really want to get back into that math review, because we look at that from an administrative standpoint, but to honor the teachers and the teachers, I think it's important when we go back to that as well as involve community members. One thing I mentioned here is that last year shut down a lot of talk with the math review because of the budgetary concerns, and I was happy to kind of offer up any curriculum funds that we had on the chopping block that meant saving positions and things like that. Right now, we don't really know what's going to happen, but we've got money for this year, which means, so I'm going to just double check and not spend that money for the end of the year. So I really want to move forward with that. As I invited you before, I'm welcome to have board members if you'd like to serve any of those committees. We'd be more than happy to have you on there. Just let me know. You don't have to today, but if you're interested in that, please let me know. Some headway in computer science next year for the secondary level. This first one, I've actually felt kind of good about that the last 3 years or so, because it's been so out there and nebulous. I had a good meeting with Jared Mason and Kevin Powell last week, where we really solidified some plans moving forward. As you guys know, currently we have a required course called Computer Applications 1. We are essentially going to modify that and turn it into something we're tentatively calling media computers now to help satisfy those computer science high school required standards starting next year. Kevin and Jared have kind of come up with ways of modifying the curriculum and adding some pieces to turn that computer applications course into a special course. We'll have to buy some things, including some online curriculum supports, some robot basically kits to help kids build and program to meet more of those standards. And then also we're looking at, when we hire Nancy Munson, who's replacement for Regina, looking at including some part in there to make sure that that person we hire in, hopefully get the endorsement at minimum for computer science. If not, they already have something along those lines, and they're part time, something that's more education. So we've got a really good path forward. That elementary, we've already got a plan as well that I mentioned in there, using basically lessons from code.org, which are free. They don't require any kind of experience with computer science, and we'll take care of training to get teachers all in line with that. That should be relatively easy for them to adopt. District assessment update. When we had our January 3rd in service with our PLC work, we asked them some important questions about what their next steps are for the district assessment system. And I've got 2 groups scheduled so far that would like to come in and do some workshop work with me. It's been very successful in the past, so I'm excited to do those, as well as continue going through what other groups need and then pulling them in as necessary. And again, remember, a lot of this is kind of aligned with that wonderful story I told you last month about the WDD is changing certain things around in terms of priority standards and such. You see these steps.
I read it.
You were, okay.
I wasn't there, but I read it.
Assessments, just so you guys know, the Whitehall interim is currently open. Students have begun testing. I haven't heard any complaints, which is always a good thing. I think that is going relatively smoothly. And although that hasn't really been an issue lately, the next point on there is, you might have heard about it, in our January 3rd in service, we had some massive connection issues with Zoom calls, so we kept people at their campuses and had them join together electronically for PLC time, like we did a few years ago in the past. And I think universally, teachers were very unhappy with connection speeds. I've been working with Annie and trying to figure out exactly what's going on with that. When I wrote this report, we were looking into Union Wireless to see if they could find anything on their end, and I think they did actually on Friday. They reported back to us that they found some issues that might resolve these connection speeds, which is going to be tremendous because we have another in-service on February 4th. We're going to try to do PLC time again electronically, so we create that worked. So we're not completely turning teachers off on that. Beyond that, though, the teachers reported fairly positive about that time. We can try to reserve time for them to be in their classrooms and help prepare them for this back to school after the winter break. We didn't get universal the same amount of time for all schools because SES and SMHS did their audio enhancement training, which we really realistically put anywhere else other than to make teachers come back for a training later on. But they respond well to that as well. And then other pieces in here, just working on some PD opportunities for teachers. There's a training that we're trying to get for staff regarding disruptive students that staff have shown a lot of interest in. So we have some difficulties in trying to get that training in the near future for them. So right now we're handling that on a case-by-case basis with people that are truly invested in trying to get that training done as quickly as possible to provide that for them. And then we're looking at next fall providing that training for all staff, just in general, to kind of help with that, just because there's a number of reasons we get into teachers are looking for that support, so we'll provide that to them. Dr. Copeland and I have been working on our implementation plan for our proposed use of SF3 funds. We actually did some of that work on Thursday. Tomorrow, and we'll finish that up and turn that into the state, get that approved, move forward with that. And then business again. The grant audit, they came back and said they provide some additional information. We provided it to them. We didn't have to go. I haven't heard anything back yet, at least nothing negative. So hopefully we'll be done with that.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there any highlights from Rachel Johnson's report?
I'll go back.
Go ahead.
I forgot to go over Rachel's.
Yeah.
I apologize, but just really great that she's done a number of trainings to just help support teachers when necessary. She's been helping out in the middle of your testing for MClass Dibbles. She did testing for here and that's Mountain as well to kind of relieve that pressure. And then she's also taking on some additional assistance directly with teachers at SES. She is in first grade. She's been helping kindergarten, and now she's going to be in 6th grade as well. Just based on this teacher requests. In a nutshell, but, do you have any questions about the report?
Thank you. Okay, we do not have any unfinished business at this time. Item 9, new business regarding the revision of the town Saratoga bus routes.
This, actually, I was contacted by Mac, and then also Eddie and Darren have been involved in this, and we had a transportation board committee meeting this past week. What has happened is in the northwest part of Saratoga, that includes the trailer park all the way down to the main street up to about Rochester, well, up to that north part of town. That's the route we're talking about. And over time, as younger kids, and that's the biggest Saratoga route. The other one goes up behind the grocery store and maybe across from there, and then there's one that goes across the east side of the bridge over in that area. They have expanded stops just over the years, just due to request and drivers being nice and this and that and the other. And so that has developed into a route that's got over 20 stops that are not, there's just a lot of stopping at individual houses as opposed to a stop. On the other two routes, it's not that way. I think there's maybe four stops. Is that what they said over there behind where you live in there, kind of up in that area? And there's either 3 or 4 on the east side of the bridge. I'm not remembering exactly. But anyway, it's a very big imbalance as to the number of stops. And Max said he's getting comments from parents that live in those other areas. Well, why can't we get stops at our house like that one? And it just is developed over time into just an enormous amount of stops. Then when there's a substitute, it's very hard to know where to stop, and also just kind of the time element of it. So we had a meeting, we discussed it. I think there's a map in here that shows the proposed stops and a list of the stops. So they're proposing to begin after about a couple of weeks' notice of getting information out to kind of reducing that to 8 stops at least, and seeing how that works for a while. So that's kind of the background. Joe and Charlie were there. They're welcome to add anything to that discussion. Darren and JD can add anything, or if you have questions, because they're the ones that will probably contact first if they haven't already been about this. So that's kind of where we are. So we're just basically asking approval of that Transportation Committee's recommendation that would begin on January 31st on a Monday. So if you have questions of either one of the principals or committee members or other comments.
Did Mac help you revise where was the most central
location? I think he got input from the drivers and
the whole transportation.
Well, I think that was Mike Ellen, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. The one that used to, a former head of transportation. And all of the stops are either at a parking lot or at a street light. I mean, they're logical places for bus stops. And I think nobody would have to walk more than 2 blocks to get on a bus. So.
And as a committee member, we were rather impressed with all the thought that had gone into this process. And also the fact that when they get a substitute, the substitute would know where to stop. And so, because there was a definitive route, and a lot of thought has gone into the timing, and it's quite a logistical thing. We thought that it was well done, and we agree with the plan, and so we recommend the board approve it.
They should be able to start a little bit later in the morning since there's less stops, and then be finished a little earlier. I mean, there's a little bit of time saving that should be. And then when we talked, I think, with Charlie, and I talked with Cindy to get a little background of how they do it here, and they don't have anything near the stops. I mean, it's just a very few in Elmo and Hannah. Granted, that's a little bit smaller town than Saratoga, but just to kind of compare, got a little background information there.
Yeah, I think Cindy's idea is that she didn't give in. She's had requests for additional stops, and she's not giving in.
Normally where that starts is when there's a new kindergartner that comes in and the parents ask the bus driver, can you just stop at my house? And I think over time, that's just built up, probably being too nice, really.
They're not trying to do anything different, they're just trying to clean up the bus route so that it's just more efficient.
We need a motion. Moving forward.
I move that we approve the town center.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve that bus route plan. Any further discussion? I'll add that I sent an email to J.D. Johnson that I've been very happy with Mac on our route. The route driver has done a phenomenal job. So I've been super happy. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Treasurer's report, Ms. Wells.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your general fund balance at the end of December was $5,237,854.40. You can see there your revenue and reimbursed expenses and your bills and payroll for the month of December. The major receipts in section 2, November receipts that come in December are our major receipts that we get. One of the big payments we get from the county treasurer, and of course our monthly foundation payment from the state of Wyoming. You also see in section 3 there are your balances at the various rates that we have. Of course, WildStar is still our best rate. Can't get anything in a CD or long-term investment for more than 0.01 or 0.05. So WildStar pays us pretty good. Any questions on your general fund? Okay, on your other funds, you can see your balances in your various grant funds. Donna did add the ARP 611 and 619 this month that Robin has alluded to. And we haven't added the 1.2 million yet in the ARP money until the grant is approved. We'll add that money on there as well. You see the comparison between payroll of December 2020 and December 2021, and that is for all funds, so that includes some of the new grant positions and that sort of thing. So that gives you a taste of what the difference would be from one year to the next. Your scholarship funds, there were no new scholarships issued during the month of December. And your other funds, the employee benefit, your major maintenance, your capital construction, your depreciation reserve, your lunch fund, your activity funds, encampment, Hannah, and Saratoga. Any questions regarding the other funds report? Were there any questions regarding the summaries of your revenue and expenditures that come out with those links? Hearing none, that concludes my report.
Thank you. We'll entertain a motion on the bills.
Georgia is not here. The total bill amounts should be there in your,
On the bill approval form.
under administrative, under the bills approval list, if someone would like to read that.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the following bills. General fund, $212,287.04. Federal fund, $42,917.13. Major maintenance fund, $57,908.87. Hot lunch fund, $23,711.51. Encampment activity account, $9,166.35. HEMHS activity account, $4,150.55. Saratoga Schools activity account, $1,206.44, for a total of $351,347.59. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the bills on a grand total of $351,347.89. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, items 12. Oops, sorry.
Bills Committee.
Bills Committee. For February, it's Miller, Alameda, and Clark. All right, thank you. Item 12A, items from the board is to review this placemat, plan, mission, vision, goals twice a year. There's no changes, it's just a review. If anybody saw anything on it that they felt was an issue.
I would suspect too, the new person coming in might want to take it, I mean, that would be the time to take a look at this in the summer or something, just guessing.
We call kicking the can down the road, or not a lame duck session. Okay, I guess we'll leave it. That's a good idea. It's a good. We will miss you.
No changes are recommended.
We will miss you. That's probably what I should have said. We don't have any policies and regulations. In this portion, there is a portion one to talk about later regarding the superintendent. We don't have a report from George, she's not here. Appoint the board legislative liaison. Hard to know what our legislatures may or may not be if they come to anything districts, but the point is just somebody to keep up with what's going on in Diane and talk to legislators. Does anybody like to do this? Likes to follow it?
Stop staring at me, Paul.
I'm not staring.
I said Paul.
Casey. I was looking at Cassie, and I thought maybe she'd want this.
Casey's done a great job.
That's fine, I can do it. My time is extremely limited, as everyone is well aware.
Right.
Yeah, I can keep up with it. It's a short session, so.
Okay.
Sally's pretty good at it too, so.
Yeah, that's a lot of it, yeah. All right, well, we'll leave it the same, Casey, not Cassie. Okay. Main conversation topic here, regarding the hiring, qualifications, process, timeline, etc. It was nice, I felt, Brian Farmer to be available for us to visit about what he views the process to be. Sounds like they already have their time booked on that February 1st, or they're still planning that. That's a Tuesday. He mentioned 5 p.m. Is there any strong reason for anybody else to do it differently than that?
We're gonna do a central office, I'm sure.
Yeah, that way we have enough room to spread out. So I think we could go ahead and advertise that. So that's just a special meeting, and then we go into executive session for the most of it. Come out. What else do we want to do? Yes.
So when we would come out of the executive session is where, if whatever candidates we would have chosen, we would.
I think we could announce that as a.
Sounds like, I mean, according to what you said.
Yeah, if we have them, if we get to that. Okay, the note on here says that the National Superintendent Conference is the 16th through 19th. So if there are any of the candidates that are planning to be for that, just need to be conscientious of that. But there may likely be some that aren't, so if it's over 2 weeks, we just.
I noticed he said there, on that kind of jogged my memory a little bit, that there was one interview I went on that did it like he said, Crick did it. In other words, had all three on the same day, but they alternated groups, and it was just rotated everything. The only issue with that is then you would have also have 3 interviews that whole day, so it's kind of a long day. I'm not sure that's the only thing with the board. You know, instead of having one interview in the evening, on 3 days, you would have all day stuff, so.
Yeah.
But I did do one thing that way, one interview session.
The thing that I would think about in that process, because I would like to, as an individual board member, attend the community meeting and also the staff meeting, just to observe so I can see how that candidate interacts with the others. I mean, that's what I would want to do. Whereas if you had them all on a rotational basis, we as a board would not be able to do that.
Yeah. And so there's some notes in here from last time with 3 candidates, 3 different community forum locations. Staff forum was 2 from certified, 2 from classified in each building. You know, he kind of made, you know, kind of an outline, some thoughts he had, and obviously we'll talk about that more in that meeting. I've been thinking about this some too, a fair bit, and I think it's attached. Okay. And this is maybe more to start a conversation or question. It says, let's go to the draft interview schedule 1-17-22. Should load up.
We all did it at the same time, so it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Go to what now?
Except Joe.
Yeah, everybody.
Draft interview schedule 1-17. So, and so I have some questions in here. This is before Brian talked, and to try to get 2 staff from every school is better than no staff. Maybe principals, Mike, you guys up here, like, if we had some staff forums before the school day, would the staff be interested in coming to that, to have a chance to meet with them? It's a pretty big decision, and so this is a draft I kind of put together. I think there's no times on this, and I think it's over 2 days, but I think there could be blocks of time in there. Would be like to go to encampment, like at 7 or 7:15 in the morning, and like meet with the encampment, just the encampment staff. So certified, classified, whoever wanted to be there. And then kind of look at the school after the school started. You know, do something with central office staff, because there's, you know, Sally, Dana, Andy, you know, the other people that work in the office. But have a chance midday to talk to the central office staff, maybe have lunch. Do this Saratoga schools after lunch, and then meet with their staff after school. And then the community forum at night or in the evening, and then a board meeting. This pushes it a little maybe, but the day 2, meet with the Northern End staff before school in Hannah. And then look at the schools. And if there's a time just for a community thing there in the morning, even in the, you know, like the cafeteria or something. And I know normally we try to do it one day, but I guess one of my, this is one of looking at things that have happened in his recommendation. The more opportunity for all the staff at least to see the candidates, whether they choose to or not, that's fine, but I sort of like to do what we can do to give them an opportunity to see him. And then one of the concerns I thought about moving the community forum is it's hard for somebody, if we had it once up here on the north end, once in the encampment, once in Saratoga, if people don't go to all 3, it's a little hard to compare and contrast.
And we can video all of them, can't we, and put them on whatever Nanette does. You can do that YouTube thing.
I mean, we probably should check legalities, but yes, I can do that. I mean, I don't know if that's infringement or whatever on their part. Is there any problem with that?
You're talking about videotaping the actual.
Community forums.
So this is another thing to think about, pros and cons. Just trying to think of ways to get more opportunity for each of the staff and the central office to have some time with the candidate. I mean, Jim, you've been through this process more. Any pros, cons? And I, like, if this was a day and a part of a day, one thing I'd really want to do is block off a couple hours the first day where there's nothing scheduled for that person to go back to the room, make phone calls back home. Because if you start in the morning and you go till 9 at night, our experience even with principals is they're gassed.
Yeah, you have to build in some breaks and that sort of thing. So basically what you're saying is having community forums and staff forums in all 3 areas of the district.
No, so this would just seem to be just one in the Flat Valley.
Okay.
And one kind of donuts or something the next morning up north. So that people from up north could come to that one in the evening.
Well, I would still like if we could have at least one community up north. You know, I mean, we got the rec center, we got the gym, we got something. What we don't want to do is isolate those guys up there.
So I guess that's my so do we need to have one of the evening ones up there, or will something during the day suffice?
I think you could probably have a community forum up there, make it a full 2-day thing, but you don't have time with the administrators in there either. Like do a lunch the second day with the administrators, and then if you do an evening thing, even with the community forum up there, or whatever time you want to do it, have a community forum up there too, and then have your lunch with the administrators at one point.
Yeah.
In there, and that could give, you can spread other things out in there too, and make it a full 2-day thing. It would be a full 2 days, but you could spread things out a little more and give a little more downtime and a little more travel time, etc.
The administrator lunch is usually where you have the central office lunch. We don't, I mean, we'll meet them.
Yeah, and this is just an idea, these could
And I
change,
think
yeah.
the administrator.
And I guess, so how important is your administrator lunch? I guess, so if you're giving them some building tours and walk around, would you rather meet with them one-on-one or a group time with them?
Now, are you talking about a group time with?
Well, you're saying administrator lunch with the superintendent.
Yeah, when I interviewed here, we had my schedule, and I guess it was the other two, the same. We had a lunch, I kind of think it was at the Wolf, and all the admin team was invited, and that's kind of the back and forth with the admin team and the candidate. Then I had a tour in the morning, went to do the lunch at lunch with the admin team. Then I had a staff forum that everybody was invited, but it was in one location, which you're talking about maybe splitting that up. But then we had a community forum in the Flat Valley Community Center where there were people from all areas of the district that came to that. It was open to anybody. And then the interview was after that, the board interviews. That's kind of the way mine went.
Right.
Were you on the board then, James?
No.
So I was, surprisingly. And, well, no, I wasn't yet, but almost. And I did, I facilitated Jim's interview with Saratoga, but what they did at that time was they took one candidate to encampment to the Opera House. Jim was in Saratoga, and then did they bring?
Larry was up north.
Yeah.
I ran the staff interviews for the staff committee.
So they took one candidate to each community, and you pretty much just had to go.
Yeah.
So, and it worked pretty well, Joe, don't you think, or I don't know?
I think
I
so.
think I went to all 3 of them.
I did, and the community forums, and the one I remember specifically was the community forum in encampment, because that was at the Opera House, and it was packed.
Yeah, it was.
So there were people from
everywhere.
And I remember getting questions from people from encampment and up north at the community center forum that I had for the community. So there were some that traveled around, I guess. They're very interested, but one thing, if you can if you can film the community forum, put it on YouTube where everybody can see it. The staff could go to the communities too, if they wanted to, it was open to anybody.
Well, then depending on weather or something, if you can't travel, you still have the ability to be able to see all three candidates.
Deb Riker was my tour guide, and we couldn't see anything that morning. I wish you could see the mountains. Snowing pretty heavy, my day.
I think
And
maybe,
Brian could answer some of these logistical stuff too.
would it not have been hard to go to a 2-day interview though, for you? Because you had another job that you still had to go to in 2 days, then you have travel time, so that almost ends up being 4 days you're gone. If you're traveling.
Well, that's why the point of us trying to get done in the morning so they could go home that day.
Yeah, doing it that same day, but I wouldn't do it a whole.
That's why I would.
Yeah, till Sunday might be, because I traveled home that next day. Right. I was doing that. In fact, I went to see Bob Pat. There were some board members that needed Ned and Hughes for breakfast that just came and invited Melissa and I just to visit. I can't remember. I think it was the board member that
I know, and that's one of the things Brian had originally sent out was like a breakfast with the board members the next day. If you're gonna do that, that was my thought, like, why don't you come meet with the staff instead of the board members? Yeah, we have some time. I was
just gonna say another option if you do want to have the interview over 2 days is the first day they could travel in and then you could almost do like 2 community forums, one the first day on the north end and then have another one the following day like on the south end and then still meet with the board that evening. Kind of swap them.
not have it really start until
Later in
a
the
5 p.m. or.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a community, it's gotta be after 5 people can hope for work.
Like you like travel one day
travel in the first
and
day.
then one evening followed up by another evening. Yeah, I mean, I think realistically, most of the candidates, whoever we're going to get, are going to be within driving distance for the most part, or the likelihood of them staying goes significantly down. Just to fly here, it's not fully true, but people that are within driving distance are more likely to stay a longer time. Doesn't mean we wouldn't. But that's a good, if you're trying to get stuff into communities rather than start first thing in the morning, if you start with afternoon or evening, and wrap up an afternoon or evening.
Unless you're traveling for a long ways, how do you feel after you traveled all day? They wouldn't want to talk to people.
Well, that could be, I guess, their discretion if they wanted to come a day before because they didn't want to travel, but, again, depending on where they're coming from.
Yeah, it might be easier to decide once you know who your candidates are too.
That's my question.
You could kind of facilitate it around.
Does this all change with an in-house candidate?
Yeah.
You wouldn't need a tour. That's a discussion.
But I think you still need to fairly give them the same opportunity to staff.
Yeah, to the people, yes, I'm just talking about the tour.
You're not as worried about a lot of those things.
Yeah, and I'm by no means set on that. I just thought it is more than one day, but it's.
Well, I think then they get at least with yours, I like that they get every single, enough time to talk to people in every single community, which I do think is important, especially if they're not from here to understand the.
And I get trying to do it in a day, but also I guess pretty important.
I think Brian Farmer is the one that said this is the most important decision you're going to make as a board.
And then one thing from the superintendent standpoint is pretty important too, where you decide to move to. We'll see. So I just want to share that we have time to think about it between now and then. Yeah, it may change, like you say, coming up in 2 weeks. Any feedback from you guys as far as things that you felt have worked good or bad in the past, schedule-wise, venue-wise?
We're looking at you, Mike, you've been here to ours.
I will say that the superintendent searches that I've been part of in this district, the community forums have been well attended, and people will travel to those to see them. If they want to see it, they're going to be involved. And I remember the Opera House being packed, I remember the community center being packed the last time. And the search before that, they did not do those. And it did not go as well.
Kind of like Jim said though too, I know when I came for mine, I got here in the afternoon. If I would have done something that evening, it would have been nice so that the next day was not just packed. I mean, it started first thing in the morning till that evening. If I could have knocked something out that first evening when I got there, even if it's one community thing or just meet with the board in the office or something in there, and then the next day kind of hit a little bit, it would have been kind of breaking up. But that first evening, because if they're coming in, they're going to get in mid-afternoon, something like that, and get part of that next day. You might be able to knock one community forum out that first week.
Brian, like potentially the north end or something.
I would like to suggest that you go ahead and figure out who you're gonna have leading the forums and things like that ahead of time, so that you have an idea of who you're gonna do. That way they can start preparing and figuring out questions.
The board that did Dr. Copeland's, it was not anyone involved in the school. I mean, I was thinking I was on the board, I wasn't, but I came on the board, I think, the next fall. So like I did the one in Saratoga, I can't remember who did it in Encampment, but it wasn't anybody that was like staff of the school or on the board or, you know, so that's something to think about. And then there's people out there that will do them. Simple enough.
And did Brian say they had suggestions and questions and forms and stuff?
Yeah, he had some suggested questions and stuff.
I mean, you can veer from, I mean, it's kind of veer from off a little bit.
And then the community forum was less formal than the staff interview and the board interview, because we all had specific questions, and we asked the candidates the same questions. So, you know, we're comparing apples to apples, and not, but the community was more open.
I think you had a set of questions that I asked you and you answered, and then we opened it up for the community to ask some.
But I think what Annette was saying is, you know, if we could get those community, well, without really knowing.
We haven't decided to do them in 3 different communities yet, so it's hard to know. Ask 3 people to do it. So without knowing the form, it's hard to know who to ask.
I would say that having a committee of teachers, like 2 from each school, would be a really good thing, and you could get a lead teacher. I know that's what Steve did, is he met with all of those people, and they did the teacher interview for every one of them, and they went to each place and did that.
And we narrowed down our questions, we had this list of questions that we asked, and I couldn't get all of them to ask the questions, so they had me ask all the questions.
So, okay. The day and a half versus the 1 day program, as far as staff, you know, if they start on the north end or something, if we did it a day and a half, they don't have to be one staff forum. They can go to each staff. So you have one up north, there's one in Canton, could be one in Canton, one in Saratoga. So you don't need 2 everywhere. They're just, you could have lead ones at each place, but they wouldn't be one staff forum.
Although if you want it to be consistent and fair to everybody, it needs to be the same staff committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you did it in 3 places, you need the same ones at each place. If you only do
Same
one,
questions.
same questions, and you
Or
can
questions,
yeah,
very little.
right, I understand.
That's why that meeting's 4 to 5.
One of the things you probably need to consider too is even now, and it's been going on for probably the last 15 plus years, even at the principal building administration level, the interview is basically 2 days. You're there for these 2 days. may not be jam-packed the entire 2 days, but you're there at least, one full day and part of another. But it's, even with the driving and stuff like James is talking about, you're talking, that's the process that they go through. So you have to put the time in. Just plan on it. Right. Right.
Yeah, that early one day, whole process the next day, and go back third day.
Yeah, 3 days.
You're still gonna, you can split that up and start earlier on the first day. And then have a little bit of a break, would be better than nonstop
on the next day, because you still need to call home and see the kids, the spouse, or if they come or don't come. If they do come, they want a chance to drive around town a little bit.
Yeah, and somebody took Melissa. Yeah. So there's the wife part of it too, which is kind of nice if they're involved. Or husband.
But yeah, spouse or kids. Well, I didn't mean, I knew, old school.
Spouse, I should say.
I'm not next to him there.
That's just a general. All right, good. Let's look at the draft timetable. So really no surprises. Some of those original dates. It just says applications due the 28th. Is it the 27th or 28th?
28th is a Friday.
I thought it was too.
I kind of think that
It's
the
fine.
website says.
Okay, the 28th, to clarify, is what we think is the due date. I mean, it says on the website. Okay, February 1st. And the interview process, the selection of the candidates is basically a board-only executive session decision, I think. So the board will meet, the board will those 3 candidates, and then get input. Those interview dates, kind of the next couple of weeks, as Brian talked about. Go from there. Any questions, thoughts, comments on that?
Yeah, the interview dates are kind of up in the open.
Depends on when they can come, and
a lot of coordination has to go into that.
right, and it is February, so roads permitting, we'll do the best we can. If it's like today, a beautiful day in Mexico, it's wonderful, but the likelihood of that 2 weeks in a row is not awesome.
This was our one good day.
This is our one good day. It was nice coming to Rock River twice last week too. Okay, there is one policy which Stephen Priest pointed out that we may have some issues with, and thank you for bringing that to our attention, Stephen. It was hurt you in any way, but we're good to bring that. So policy CBA.
On item 1, and this used to be a requirement, so it probably just had never been revised since then. That's kind of Court Bill did a little research on it. So I don't know, on some of the job descriptions and qualifications, they add, like here it would be a number 5, such alternatives to the above qualifications the board may find appropriate acceptable, or I don't know if you recommend just take out number 1, period.
Right, it's up to the board, I'd probably just take it out.
It was the simplest thing.
It was required by the state.
Just take out the superintendent endorsement portion, but not the other portion. Take the whole thing.
I'm sorry, my internet went down, so I don't.
Okay, so number 1 says must satisfy all Wyoming State Board of Education regulations for eligibility, teacher certification, educational specialist.
So none of that's required.
None of that's required.
No, all number 1's not required. Okay. But the endorsement part is the one that I think restricts you.
Right. Because as in other things, you know, we could ask that they work towards getting superintendent certification. Or we could not. Get it, right? But there may be obviously people that are qualified to be principals that apply for the job but aren't currently endorsed as superintendent.
So what you're saying, Bill, is number 1 is not required anymore?
No. Not required by the state. Yeah, you guys.
So it sounds like the options need to eliminate all of number 1, or to eliminate and hold an endorsement of superintendent. Or add that caveat down at the bottom, alternatives to any of these qualifications.
Well, it's one of those, if we're not going to require it, then we need to erase it.
Yeah, and the question, if we erase number 1, do we feel like number 2 through 4 realistically cover it?
Yeah, so we're not getting some kid fresh out of college.
Right.
With no experience.
We could add something at the bottom that said, what did you say we could add at the bottom?
We could say
Well,
that,
I like to
could say that
Qualifications as the board sees fit.
Such alternatives to the above all qualifications as the board, and I just found that on some other job policies that were here, job descriptions. That's where I got that phrase from. So it is in some other things.
Because you kind of want them to.
Well, you want them to know what's required.
Yeah.
Without that sentence on the bottom, which is open-ended.
Yeah, it just pretty much opens everything. 2, 3, and 4 do cover.
I think they cover
a lot of
well.
what you would be looking for. I would think the superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
They've done 2, 3, and 4. Okay.
Yeah. Did you discuss this with the state? Gentlemen?
What's that?
The gentleman was on the road.
No, have you?
But that was not, when I went back and looked at the things that he had listed, it was not listed as a qualification.
It's not state statute.
It's not listed under the job.
In the job description.
Yeah, in under qualifications, it's not listed. There is.
So is qualifications recommended but not required? Is there some sort of statement we just add to that?
I personally like eliminating number 1. Or maybe, so on number 1, if it says must satisfy all Wyoming State Board of Education requirements for eligibility, does that really mean anything? I mean, are there any state requirements to be a superintendent?
No.
I don't, well, whatever the board wants, but there's not a legal requirement to be endorsed. That's the bottom line, as a superintendent through PTSD.
You know, you
Probably
could,
most are, but it's not.
yeah, you could leave that language, Jim, and I guess the answer is there are at this point, none. If you left it, as you just said.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we remove number 1 under qualifications for policy CBA.
Second.
And moving second to strike qualifications number 1 on policy CBA. Any further discussion?
I'm just waffling right now as far as lowering the standards. Because I think if somebody is working towards an endorsement, or at least studying what a superintendent should be, and, that's, I'm not sure if we could word that differently maybe, without striking it. I just feel difficult about lowering the standards.
I think, Joe, if you read 3 specifically for me, will allow me to strike 1, which is you must have graduate work in education areas of elementary and secondary curriculum development, staff development, and human resource management beyond the minimum endorsement. So we aren't just getting a teacher that shows up to want to be a superintendent. They've actually had some, I mean, technically 2, 3, and 4 are fine, but that one right there kind of stands out to me.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm just giving you my opinion on it.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think what's problematic about number 1 is that we might be eliminating someone that's very well qualified for the position just because they don't have the endorsement.
Or they don't know that they don't have to have it.
Or it's not something that the state's required, so they don't have, and we could eliminate them just because it's not a requirement of the state of Wyoming.
And another option, Joe, thinking about your point, would be to remove that and then add one at the bottom that the board prefers the superintendent have superintendent qualification endorsement, or be working, or
Be willing to work for it.
Be willing to work towards acquiring it.
So, Jim, if I was to ask you if you had a endorsement versus not having one, does that lower the standards? Meaning, if you don't have it versus you do have it, does that lower the standard?
I would suspect that most superintendents that have one
Would say
would
yes.
prefer to say either have it or be working toward one, or be willing to complete the superintendent endorsement, something along those lines. But that's the perspective of somebody who has it.
Getting the endorsement, what does that entail?
Yeah.
Well, Dana talked to PTSB this week, and you can get it's called an intern.
You can take 2 years for
For
an
internship.
intern permit.
And then you're working for that. It's basically like an exception authorization for a teacher to add an endorsement. You go ahead and hire and start teaching if you've got that exception. It's kind of the same principle, except it's called an intern.
And then there's 1 additional
Permit.
year that you could
Continue
take.
to work for it.
But it's
Is that
28, is it 28 credits?
I don't know, somebody over here might have that.
So the University of Wyoming offers an endorsement program for 18 hours, which is 6 classes, and you get a superintendent endorsement after you successfully pass the 6 classes. So that's one option, and then you could also take that in advance and complete your doctorate.
If you're already a superintendent, you don't have to do the internship hours. If you're not a superintendent, you have to do the internship hours. There's a difference in participating in the University of Wyoming program. If you're currently serving as a superintendent in the UW certificate program, you don't do the internship because you're already doing everything you do in an internship. If you're not serving as a superintendent, you have to do your internship, which is 240 hours serving under 2 different superintendents.
I do like the idea of working towards it. I think there's a level of professionalism in their education.
As do I.
So I do feel like we could still strike number 1 and add a new statement.
All right, motion's been called to strike number 1 and discussed. So, and it's been seconded. Ready? So all in favor of striking number 1, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now, we want to make another motion to add something regarding,
I'm not sure how to word that.
Do you have an idea?
You can leave number 1 the same, or just add it to last, either hold or working towards endorsement. That's it.
I already struck number 1.
yeah, it's gone.
Well, I know it's
It's gone.
We're changing it.
So basically, the superintendent shall be endorsed as a superintendent in the state of Wyoming or be willing to work towards completing the superintendent endorsement program.
Within, say, 2 years. Do you want to time frame on it?
That thing has a time frame, huh? But that is just.
UW's program has a time frame.
You just have to complete the number of hours that you have to leave.
Gotcha. We would have to put a time frame.
Yeah. This is an
From your experience, Dr. Copeland, how long did it take you to really get a grasp on, the dynamics of the district?
I learned a lot of the community forums. That was the beginning.
But I mean, you come in and, it's gonna take a while to learn.
Well, that's the real learning curve. I mean, I had had a lot of years' experience as a superintendent already, so as far as knowing how to do stuff that you do all the time, but my part was a learning curve of how this district's dynamics work and making that work and trying to pull things, seeing ourselves as a district, which is one of the goals the board gave me when they hired me, and getting on the calendar and some other things they specifically asked me to begin to work on, but that I don't think it took a long time, but talk to people, travel around, talk to staff, talk to community people, you learn pretty quick. That community feel.
But if you have somebody come in with less experience, would it maybe take longer or?
So, I don't know, they might have to spend a little more time learning, what goes on day-to-day operations of the school, whereas I get used to that. So. I would say if you want to make a uniform mode with an exception authorization for teacher, it would be 3 years, because that's just typical of how long somebody gets to add an endorsement for teaching. So I don't know why you wouldn't just say 3 years then for this.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. The 3 years, 3 years. So can we make a motion in that regard?
You're wanting 3 years, they have to report it for 3 years?
No, a maximum, so the point would be that we would like them to be endorsed to be a superintendent or be willing to work towards it within 3 years.
But if they offer a 2-year contract?
We don't have to.
We can change
That's
the
irrelevant.
contract, it's up to us for them.
That's irrelevant. They can be 1 year, they can be gone. Other than the 2-year contract. Yeah, Stephen.
As somebody that's in the UW program, I think if we give them 3 years, it's very doable. The only caveat to that is right now they're down professors in that program. So, I should already have been done with my program, but there were a couple times that the classes that I need weren't offered. I was planning to take a couple of classes in different summer semesters, and they weren't. So I'm actually behind because the classes that I needed weren't offered when I wanted to take them. So 3 years I think is doable and easily done. But if they run into the problem like I did, it could take 3 years. But it could be where they could get done with it very quickly because classes are offered when they need them, and depending on when they get into the program, so forth, they get done with it very quickly.
The reality of the issue is if somebody's doing a really good job and there's a small hang up on one class and there are 3 credits
The board
short.
can communicate that, the board can say.
Yeah, the board's not gonna say, sorry, you're 1 class short, dang, you've been doing a good job. That's
We
not-
like this process, it's fun to do.
That's not, that's not the reality of how this would work.
How about it would be something like, we would like to have or to be holding the superintendent endorsement or work within 3 years to acquire that endorsement.
Maybe you could do it through just through your contract negotiations instead of bringing it as a policy too. Your candidate, just say, look, this is what we, as the board desire. And you don't have to put it in policy. I feel like you're getting caught in the weeds there, trying to figure out the perfect wording. You don't really need it. You got somebody who's got K-12 administrator endorsement, that's what you need.
Bringing clarity to the situation, look at that. I agree with you.
Take anything in our contract.
Yeah.
Just make it clear that they know that that's going to be the offer.
Because it might be a surprise if they look at your policy or what your superintendent requirements are, but then it's in your contract, it's not up front. I mean, you don't see a contract until you're actually being hired. What if you go to hire somebody that is nowhere close to that and they go, I didn't know I had to do that? That's what, I mean, what if he says, I don't want to do that?
Until they can hire somebody different.
But you went through the whole process to give a person a contract, is the problem. You got that far and he didn't know?
We had one walk out during our process, remember? He walked out to give him a job, gone, he'd already taken another one.
That was principal.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it happens. So I think, I don't think you're gonna get.
If you're upfront in the interview process, this would be one of our expectations.
That could be one of your questions.
Then they would know, and they would be expecting to be honest with you.
I'm not aware of too many places. You get into some really bigger districts and it's, I've heard of it, but most people are gonna assume that either they're gonna need it or need to get it. I mean, there's just not that many.
And then the other reality of the situation, I think for most people that are a superintendent, they would want to be endorsed just because it gives them more career flexibility.
I agree with that, however, looking at some of the program offerings and looking at the different colleges, in 94 when this was written, there was a lot of credibility in the accreditation process. Now you can stay up late at night and go to Sally Struthers University to get a superintendent. So really you need to look at the candidate and their qualifications and go from there. I would agree that, at first it may look like it's lowering your standards, but then the other side of it is the program that they go through. If I go through, I'm partial to the University of Wyoming, if I go through that program, it's a little better than that late night college that I was talking about. So I think you have to look at the candidate and look at their qualifications. And if that's important, word it like that, but not make it an exact requirement.
For sure, Darren. And I think a point to add to that, and I was thinking through this whole thing, like at the end of the day, if the district gets 6 or 8 applicants, we want the ability to hire who we feel is the best applicant for the district to be the leader, not who has the most endorsements or the most letters after their name. And that goes exactly to your point. But we want to hire the best person possible and not be over-constricted in doing so, which is the point that Stephen brought up about this in the end. So it's a long ways back to Stephen's point.
And technically, we evaluate these people every year anyway. So I feel like it's going backwards.
All right, anything else on policy CBA? All right, anything else, just in general, thoughts, comments, while we're all here, public meeting about the superintendent process? Concerns? Dr. Copeland, we appreciate your willingness to help us out with this and give us advice and, you know, and give us your take on the feedback.
I was glad I wanted to be there 5 hours.
We can make you sit outside and wait for us after the 5-hour meeting.
Oh, I was just commenting to Paul that it will be after the first when we get a fairly concrete plan on the process that we can advise the administrators to get their committees together, stuff like that. But until we have a fairly concrete process, I mean, are we gonna have a committee at each school of teachers? Are we gonna have just one teacher committee? Those questions haven't been answered.
They have not. No. And I think, you know, we should be thinking of options before we get there so that we're not drawing straws on February 1st to make it a 6-hour meeting.
Or 7.
Or 7. Yeah. But we don't. No. And like you said, it may depend on what candidates we want to interview. Okay, thank you. Item F.
And this could be because of all your other meetings you didn't want to. I mean, it's just up to you.
That's going to be my suggestion.
Check it out.
Is to not have a February work session because there's going to be
All your other meetings.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
may I interject before you go to board member comments?
You bet.
I was remiss earlier. First of all, I forgot to thank Courtney. Courtney always sets up all of our stuff at the small schools for me. She does all of the treats that you have in front of you. She does all the cute little tags and everything. And I apologize that I didn't acknowledge her earlier. Your treats, your cupcakes are from Tara and Kayla Johnson. They are local. They have a stand in the summertime that they sell from. And there are bags with sandwiches and chips and stuff over there. Please make sure you get some. Those are from Virginia. So I apologize I didn't bring that.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Courtney.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Casey, we're going to go first. We'll go this way eventually.
I just wanted to tell Laura I love the whole parent community involvement nights, days, whatever. That's great. And I think it needs to happen more in other schools because it's a huge piece of schools. So good job on that. And welcome, Annie.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys at Medbo for hosting us, and Courtney for everything. Yeah, it's nice to be out and see this part of the world. Big thanks to the donors that came through for us. It's crazy generous donations from the Farm Credit, National Association of Ag Teachers, and Ms. McMurray. A remarkable thing to do. Much appreciated. So, along those lines, Ms. Nicemunder's presentation, wonderful to see the community getting out and being involved and seeing these schools be kind of a hub of the community, being a place to interact. So we've got some of that going on in Hammond this week with the Penny War stuff, a good fundraiser for a family that needs it. So nice to hear what's going on here in the north, that we're seeing those same things happen district-wide. It's a great thing, and it just reminds me once again that I feel very lucky and fortunate to be doing what we're doing, where we're doing it. So, and welcome to Miss Annie as well.
Yeah, that was a great presentation on the community involvement. I thought that was great, and yeah, something that's been needed up here. That's fantastic. I think, stuff like that people really miss out when they homeschool their kids. I think they miss out on a lot of education things, but I just think people miss out on so much community and dealing with other kids and maybe dealing with people you don't like and dealing with teachers you don't like or parents maybe you don't like. But I think that's life, right? And so being out and being social and I haven't learned all those things. I made some faux pas about answering too quickly to Dr. Cope, maybe he'll throw a shoe at me. But I think those were, good learning opportunities. Miss Lamoureux, glad she's here, moving from Florida. I understand moving forward to Wyoming and being glad to get out there and get your kids in school. Courtney, thanks again for having everything set up, and we really appreciate it. And I got to go to Hannah and Kim and Saratoga for ball games in the last few weeks. It's just really fun to see all the crowds and get a chance to talk to people from the other communities and Rock River this last week too, to kind of feel like they're part of this.
Thank you, Courtney, for everything. Thank you, Miss Nice Winder. I practiced it in my head a bit before, but I still didn't do very good. Thank you guys all, the admin team, for guiding us as we fumble along the superintendent search. Thank you, Dr. Copeland, for still helping us, because we're gonna probably need some help. But it's been really nice just to see everybody in the community, the kids to be back in school and out and about. Hopefully the weather stays good for roads and bus drivers to get us everywhere we need to go, and thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for bringing the superintendent endorsement to our attention. Thank you to Courtney and Madison Bell. It was great to come up here. It's about one of the only times I come up here, so I appreciate it. It was good. Thank you to the donors. Also, I received a letter in the mail from Encampment for the homecoming coronation and cake auction. So just thank you for sending that out. It's really great to have those connections to the school and to be invited. So I appreciate that, even though I'm not going to be able to attend. Plus, love getting mail addressed to me. Anyways, but that's all I have.
That's not a bill.
Yeah, that's not a bill.
Ditto on everybody else's stuff. I'd like to thank Brian and WSBA. I would hate to go through this without some experience in front of us like this, so I do appreciate them helping out. Courtney, thank you. I did have you wrote down before anybody else said anything. Laura, Robin, and Noel, thanks for your report. I'd like to give a shout out to Sarah Jones. She has done a lot for elementary in Hannah. She's just an example of all the teachers that we have within our district that go the extra mile, so I do want to say thank you to them. That's it.
Yeah, Charlie's exactly right. We got a lot of good people in this district, and we need to thank a bunch of them. Laura, that turkey dinner that we had before Thanksgiving was fantastic. I'm sorry I couldn't make the pumpkin patch, but as usual, there was a strong community turnout and stuff there. Thank you to the people, the donations. $25,000 is, holy cow. That's a lot of money, especially for an individual, even though she probably has a little bit more money than Joe does over here. Thanks, Courtney, for all the treats, and thanks, James, for kind of spearheading this thing. Brian Farmer, greatly appreciated. And lastly, I guess we had kind of a coming of an end of an era here lately. Dario Soto, for you guys that don't know, is retired from coaching. So I'm pretty sure that he coached God at one point.
Mike Armstrong is doing a very big article. It's supposed to be in this Wednesday's paper. I talked to Mike earlier today, and he was at 5,000 words and was trying to pare it down because that was too big. He's shooting for a front page.
When did Dario start coaching?
His first year of coaching was 1964 in Fort Laramie, and then Fort Laramie still has.
And he even coached, I think, out of Shirley Basin, when Shirley Basin still had a school.
He used to go out there and do PE.
Yeah, what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you see Dario around don't rough him up too much, but pat him on the back and thank him for a lot of his service.
Hey, I can't hardly add anything to what everybody has already said, and I don't want to reiterate it, but I do want to take a special time to thank Lauren and Annie, two teachers here, and Laura, thank you, and thank Courtney, because I had a great experience here today, which is unusual even in all the visits I've ever done, because I had the opportunity to be able to work one-on-one with each student here, whether it be helping them read flashcards for math or whatever it might be. But just the one-on-one with each student, that was a real privilege. And of course, the fact that there aren't many helps. But and my visit here this year gave me a better perspective on the challenges that go on with multi-grades in the classroom. Kindergarten through second, all of there's a vast difference between kindergarten and second grade, even in just the maturity of the kid, let alone, how his head works, what their heads work. So anyway, I want to thank you and be sure to pass that on to Andy and Lauren. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Okay. We do not have executive session scheduled at this time. We will not have the board work session in February. So the next meeting is on a Wednesday, February 6th, 4 p.m. at the Central.
16th.
16th? Thank you. Just, okay, February 16th.